Have you ever set a huge, ambitious goal for yourself? Like a New Year's resolution? Maybe you promised yourself you'd finally get in shape or learn a new language, or maybe even start that business you've been dreaming about. You start out with all this energy, this massive burst of motivation, right? But then, a few weeks in, maybe even just a few days, that fire kind of starts to die down. And before you know it, you're right back where you started. It's an incredibly frustrating feeling, one we've all had. It makes you think, maybe I just don't have enough willpower. Well, what if I told you willpower has almost nothing to do with it? Today we're doing a deep dive into James Clear's Atomic Habits, a book that has totally flipped the script on how we think about goals and self-improvement. We're going to unpack this powerful framework that says real, lasting change doesn't come from some massive heroic effort. Nope, it comes from the compounding effect of hundreds of tiny, almost invisible decisions we make every single day. This quote, this is the perfect way to get into this whole idea. Just picture this scene. A stonecutter just hammering away at this giant rock. Day in, day out, tap, tap, tap. For the first 50, 60, even 100 swings, it looks like absolutely nothing is happening. It seriously looks like wasted effort. He'd probably be tempted to tell the guy, hey, maybe try something else, because it just feels pointless. And that is exactly what building a good habit feels like in the beginning. You go to the gym for a week straight. You look in the mirror and you see nothing. You save a little bit of money from each paycheck, and your bank account looks pretty much the same. But the secret, the thing we always forget, is that the work is not being wasted. Under the surface, something is building up. With every single small action, you're creating this invisible potential for a breakthrough. And then, one day, bam! The 101st blow lands, and the rock splits right in two. Everyone calls it an overnight success. But you'll know the truth. It was all the work that came before.
And this gets us right to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? Our culture is totally obsessed with these big, defining moments. The game-winning shot, the sudden flash of genius, the huge business deal that changes everything overnight. And we try to apply that same logic to our own lives. We think we need a massive change to get a massive result. We tell ourselves, okay, I'm going to lose 30 pounds in the next 2 months. So we jump into this brutal diet and some insane workout plan. Or we say, I'm going to write a novel, and we try to force ourselves to write for 4 hours a day right from the get-go. But this all-or-nothing approach, it's a trap. It sets the bar so impossibly high, and the second we fall short, the moment we miss a workout or eat that slice of pizza, we feel like a total failure. We think, see, knew I couldn't do it, and we quit. We're just so focused on the finish line that we totally ignore how important it is to just take the next step, no matter how small.
So if going big isn't the answer, then what is? Well, the alternative is this concept called the aggregation of marginal gains. It sounds kind of fancy, but the idea is actually beautiful and simple. Just focus on getting 1% better every single day. Just 1%. I mean, that's barely noticeable. It's almost nothing. But the math behind it is absolutely staggering. If you get just 1% better each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better by the end. But the flip side is also true. If you get 1% worse each day, by making poor choices, letting bad habits slide, you'll decline almost all the way down to zero. It's compound interest for your personal habits. And there is no better, more dramatic, real-world proof of this than the story of the British cycling team.
To really get the scale of this turnaround, you have to understand just how bad British cycling was. I mean, for almost 100 years, they were a complete joke in the pro cycling world. They had won a single Olympic gold medal in their entire history. In the Tour de France, the absolute pinnacle of the sport, a British rider had never, ever won. It got so bad that high-end bike manufacturers actually refused to sell their bikes to the team because they were afraid that being associated with them would hurt their brand. They were the laughingstock of the sport. And then, in 2003, they hired a guy named Dave Brailsford. What happened next is honestly one of the most incredible turnarounds in the history of sports. Just look at this timeline. 5 years later, at the Beijing Olympics, they were dominant. By the 2012 London Olympics, they weren't just winning, they were smashing world records. And then they went on to conquer the Tour de France, the one race that had always been out of their reach. This wasn't a fluke. It wasn't about one superstar athlete. This was a total reinvention based on one simple idea.
So what was the big secret? What on earth did Brailsford do? His entire philosophy was the aggregation of marginal gains. He believed that if you could just break down every single thing that goes into riding a bike and then improve each of those tiny things by just 1%, the combined effect would be enormous. And when I say every aspect, I mean everything. They started with the obvious stuff, of course, like making the bike seats more comfortable. But then they went further, way, way further. They tested different massage gels to see which one helped muscles recover the fastest. They hired a surgeon to come in and teach the whole team the proper way to wash their hands to cut down on getting sick and missing training.
They even analyzed the specific pillow and mattress that each rider used to make sure they were getting the absolute best night's sleep possible. And my favorite example, they painted the inside of the team's mechanic truck pure white. Why? So they could spot the tiniest specks of dust that might get into the bike's gears and slow them down. Any one of these things on its own is almost laughable. It seems obsessive, right? But Brailsford knew they all add up.
And here it is, the result of all those tiny, seemingly pointless changes. Between 2007 and 2017, just 1 decade after this new philosophy took hold, British cyclists won a jaw-dropping 178 world championships. That number is just mind-blowing. It proves that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. The goal was always to win, but it was the system of constant, tiny improvements that actually got them there over and over and over again. This isn't just a sports story. It's a fundamental lesson for success in anything. Small habits don't just add up, they compound. And that, right there, is the secret to getting remarkable results.
Okay, so let's dive into this. It's one thing to see this work for an Olympic team with a huge budget, right? But how do we actually use this in our own lives? Well, this is where James Clear's work is so practical. He gives us a simple 4-step framework, a toolkit for building better habits. He calls them the 4 laws of behavior change. We're going to break down each one. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. All right, let's start with law number 1, make it obvious. Every single habit you have, good or bad, starts with a trigger, what Clear calls a cue. It's that little bit of information that tells your brain, okay, time to run this program, and you just do it automatically. The little ping from your phone is a cue to check it. The smell of coffee in the morning is a cue to pour a cup. The really important thing to get here is that most of these cues trigger our habits without us even thinking about it. So, if we want to build a new habit, we need to design a really obvious cue for it. And on the flip side, if we want to break a bad habit, we need to make its cue invisible.
This is such a big shift in how we think. We tend to believe our habits are all about motivation or willpower. But in reality, your environment is kind of like the invisible hand that shapes your behavior. Think about it. You're way more likely to practice guitar if it's sitting on a stand right in the middle of your living room, compared to if it's packed away in a closet. You're more likely to eat an apple if it's in a bowl on the kitchen counter instead of hidden away in the fridge. This isn't about being weak-willed, it's about being human. Our brains are designed to be efficient, and they just react to the most obvious things around us. So the first step to changing your behavior isn't to just try harder, it's to redesign your world. Make the cues for your good habits impossible to ignore, and make the cues for your bad habits disappear.
And this right here is just a brilliant example of that idea in action. This study from a hospital cafeteria is perfect. The goal was super simple: get people to drink more water and less soda. They didn't put up posters about the dangers of sugar, they didn't run some big motivational campaign, they didn't lecture anybody. All they did was change the layout of the room. They made water the most obvious choice. They put it at every single drink station. They put baskets of bottled water right next to the cash registers. They didn't even get rid of the soda. It was still there if you really wanted it. But just by making water more visible and more convenient, the results were instant. Soda sales dropped, and water sales shot way up. Nobody had to use willpower. The environment did all the heavy lifting. That's the power of making it obvious. All right, let's move on to the second law, which is all about the engine that drives our habits, motivation. For something to really become a habit, it has to be something you want to do, not just something you feel you have to do. So, law number 2 is all about making your good habits more attractive, more appealing to your brain.
So what's really fascinating here is the science behind it. We usually think of dopamine as the pleasure chemical, but that's not quite the full story. Dopamine is actually released in anticipation of a reward, not when you get it. It's the chemical of desire. It's what gets you up off the couch to go grab that cookie. So the more dopamine a certain activity promises, the more motivated you are to do it. And the great news is, we can totally hijack this system. We can link our good habits to things that naturally get that dopamine flowing, which makes the habits themselves more attractive and creates that craving that makes us act.
A brilliant way to do this is something called temptation bundling. The rule is simple. You pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do. The TV network ABC were absolute masters of this. They had this block of popular shows on Thursday nights, and they wanted to turn it into a massive, unmissable event. So they didn't just advertise the shows themselves. They advertised an entire experience. They called it TGIT.
Thank God it's Thursday. And all their marketing linked watching these shows with things people already found super attractive. Kicking back on the couch after a long week, pouring a glass of wine, making a big bowl of popcorn. They bundled the thing they needed people to do, watch their shows, with the feeling of relaxation and indulgence that people were already craving. And you can do this with anything. For example, I only get to listen to my favorite podcast while I'm on the treadmill. Or, after I do 15 minutes of cleaning, I get to watch an episode of my favorite show. You're tying the effort to the reward, and that makes the chore itself way more attractive.
Now for the third law, and honestly, this one might be the most important for actually sticking with a habit long term. This law is all about reducing friction. Think of it this way. Every single thing you do requires some amount of energy. The more energy it takes, the less likely you are to do it, especially on a day when you're feeling tired or stressed out. The real secret to being consistent is to make your good habits as effortless as you possibly can.
So the crucial point here is that this isn't some character flaw. This isn't about being lazy, okay? It's basically a law of physics. We are hardwired to conserve energy. Our brains will always look for the path of least resistance. So instead of trying to fight this super powerful current of human nature, let's use it to our advantage. If you want to start running in the morning, don't just set an alarm. The night before, lay out your running shoes, your shorts, your shirt, your headphones, everything. Reduce the number of steps between you and doing the habit. James Clear also has this brilliant little hack called the 2-minute rule. It says that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Read before bed becomes read one page. Go to the gym becomes put on your workout clothes. The whole goal is to make it so ridiculously easy to start that you can't possibly say no.
This experiment is the perfect story to show how making it easy by focusing on action instead of perfection works. So a photography professor split his class into 2 groups. The quantity group would be graded only on the number of photos they turned in. 100 photos gets you an A. The quality group, though, only had to turn in 1 single photo, but it had to be nearly perfect to get an A. So, what do you think happened? At the end of the semester, all of the best photos, the most creative, the most technically skilled, they all came from the quantity group. Why? Because they weren't paralyzed by trying to be perfect. Their task was easy, just go take pictures. And in the process of snapping hundreds of photos, they were experimenting, they were learning from their mistakes, they were building their skills, they were getting their reps in. The quality group, on the other hand, spent most of their time just talking and thinking about what makes a great photo, and in the end, they had very little to show for it. The lesson is simple. The best way to make progress is just to start, and the best way to start is to make it easy.
All right, let's move on to our final law. This is the one that closes the loop. It's the part that tells your brain, hey, that was good, let's do that again. If a habit isn't satisfying in some way, if it doesn't feel good, you'll have zero reason to keep doing it. The habit has to be enjoyable if you expect it to last.
And this is where we run into a major problem with modern life. See, our brains evolved in what scientists call an immediate return environment. Our ancestors were focused on right-now problems. Find food, don't get eaten, find shelter. The rewards for their actions were immediate. But today, we live in a delayed return environment. The rewards for our good habits are often weeks, months, or even years down the road. The reward for saving money today is a comfortable retirement decades from now. The reward for going to the gym today is being healthy 6 months from now. Meanwhile, the rewards for our bad habits, they're almost always immediate. Eating that donut feels good right now. Scrolling through social media feels good right now. So to fix this mismatch, we have to find a way to get some immediate satisfaction from our good habits.
And this solution is so wonderfully simple. I love it. This strategy was famously used by a young stockbroker who had to make 120 sales calls every day. Now, making one sales call gives you basically zero satisfaction. The payoff is way off in the future. So what did he do? He put 2 jars on his desk. One started the day full with 120 paper clips. The other one was empty. Every single time he made a call, he would move 1 paper clip from the full jar over to the empty one. It's such a tiny thing, but what did it do? It created an immediate, visual, tangible sign of progress. He could literally see himself making progress. And that simple little act of moving a paperclip was satisfying. It was a little reward that told his brain, hey, this is working, let's do it again. You can do this with anything. Use a habit tracker and just enjoy the little thrill of marking off an X. It makes your progress visible, and that feels good.
And this right here, this is the fundamental rule that ties all 4 laws together. It's the cardinal rule of behavior change. Your brain is basically a prediction machine, and after every action you take, it's asking one question. Was that worth it? Should I do that again?
And the answer to that question is decided by the immediate consequence. If the outcome feels good, your brain gets the message, repeat this. If the outcome is painful or unsatisfying, the message is, avoid this. The 4 laws are really just a recipe for creating a situation where your good habits feel immediately rewarding and your bad habits feel immediately unsatisfying. That is how you shape your behavior for the long haul.
This brings us to the deepest, most powerful level of all of this. Up until now, we've been talking about actions and systems, but the real goal, the ultimate endgame, isn't just to do a habit, it's to change who you are. The most powerful habits are the ones that get woven into your identity. Think about it like this. Every action you take is like casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you make your bed, you're casting a vote for, I am an organized person. When you choose to go for a run, even a short one, you're casting a vote for, I am a runner. In the beginning, they're just tiny actions, but as those votes pile up, as the evidence builds, you actually start to believe it. The habit is no longer just something you do, it becomes a reflection of who you are.
And this is the final thought I really want to leave you with because it reframes this entire conversation. The most effective way to change your habits is to stop focusing on what you want to achieve and start focusing on who you wish to become. Don't start with the outcome. Start with the identity. Decide on the type of person you want to be, and then prove it to yourself with small wins. You don't need anyone's permission to be that person. You just need to start casting those votes. So the question isn't just what you want to accomplish. It's a much bigger, much more important question. Who do you truly want to become? Your answer to that is the first step. And your atomic habits, they're the path that will get you there.